The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Derek.Krebs. I'm going to be leading today's educational webinar on Prospero. So welcome one and all. We have a nice large group that are attending live, and several people attended this session later perhaps through a recording. So thanks for joining us today. I'll spend just a few minutes in a PowerPoint just introducing myself and the topic for today. Followed by the bulk of the time, we're going to be looking at some nice product features and functionalities to help you bring the easy button to your financial reporting and budgeting. So let me continue by stating some house cleaning items. Everybody on this webinar is in a muted state, but there is a question area within the GoToWebinar control panel there to your right where you see a list of attendees, and even you can minimize and maximize that with the little orange arrow that might point to the left and right to minimize and maximize it. And if you have any follow-up questions after today's session or via recording, you'll see my email there in the lower right, Derek.Krebs@msxgroup.com. So let me go ahead and begin. I'll introduce now today's topic and myself. I'm a consultant with MSX Group, and I've been doing this close to 30 years, 100% devoted, myself and our team, to financial reporting and budgeting. We had a very fun and interesting background because turning the clock back about 25 some odd years ago, we were a private company, about 150 people, named FRX Software, and we had such great reporting and budgeting products that Great Plains acquired us. Then secondly, Microsoft did. And then we worked internally at Microsoft going on about 15 years, helping develop, consult, and support these products to shape them. Many of you probably still might be using today unless you've moved to Prospero. And what we did is we took all the best features of those Microsoft products and we brought them into Prospero. So a lot of lessons learned, and you'll hopefully see several of the new features I'll share with you today. And I see a nice little mixed audience today. We have some existing Prospero customers. Maybe we had some turnover in staff and some new people filling in shoes, so welcome. Secondly, we have some existing Microsoft stacked customers that might be still using the old legacy products like FRX and Manager Reporter on the reporting side, or maybe Microsoft Forecast on the budgeting side. So it's now one cohesive product and process instead of doing double your work in multiple systems. And third and finally, I see some audience members that are partners that are looking to maybe sell and deploy the tool Prospero. So again, welcome. Let me continue now the next couple of slides. So for those people that are new and blue to Prospero, I'll just give you a few little lead-in remarks through a PowerPoint. And I'll be sure to pass this slide deck along to you, along with the recorded session as a nice little thank you that you can maybe review later or share with your coworkers. And just to confirm again, Prospero is a robust reporting and budgeting tool, primarily reporting and grabbing data that's in your general ledger. Like in our demonstration company, we have multi-company. Additionally, we have locations, departments, and accounts like revenue, expense, and balance sheet. So we primarily report off of that. However, Prospero has its own data warehouse where you can include non-general ledger data. I'll show you some examples later in today's session. Maybe 2 or 3 examples might be perhaps budgeting. Largest cost of our organization is salary costs, and maybe want to budget down to the employee. That might not be a segment in your general ledger, and for most it's not, but we can definitely budget and record actuals down to the employee level. Or a second example might be on revenue recognition, like actuals or budgeting. Perhaps I want to take my revenue budget down to the customer, product, or even salesperson level. Maybe those are not segments in our general ledger. So it does all the nice, robust reporting, forecasting, and budgeting, including interactive charts and graphs we can leverage. And then additionally, we can drill down to the account and transaction level with no need to have access to your general ledger, which is very nice for, let's say, a lot of the managers you might have that want to access this tool. And that bottom bullet point for those people that are moving away from the Microsoft stack, some excellent differentiators of Prospero. There's numerous that are contained in the slide deck. One is that last bullet point about a nice little migration of your existing Manager Reporter and FRX reports into Prospero to hit the ground running. Otherwise, a lot of our competition, you'd have to redo all of your reports, which would take several weeks and months, being a very costly endeavor. So that saves huge amounts of time and cost for those that are moving to Prospero. And then secondly, if anybody's using Microsoft Forecaster, similar story. We have a little migration path that can easily convert some of those building blocks into Prospero to hit the ground running. I'll just be very brief with these next two slides. That really just emphasizes the reporting element within Prospero. I already touched upon that. I'll better yet show you three-dimensionally inside the product. Or the next slide talks about the best things that we brought from the Microsoft stack into Prospero is the accountant-friendly and user-friendly rows, columns, and trees. Like there to the left, we might have an income statement row or line definition that I might use for 20 different reports. That way I can easily define and maintain that easily across all those multiple reports, and maybe I differ those reports by the column being used, like there in red. That example maybe is a month and year to date, but I could use various reports like rolling 12 month, actual versus budget, or maybe showing companies side by side. And third and final building block after the row column is the reporting tree there at the top, represented there in green, that I might slice and dice my reports or budgets by my entities, location, or departments. All right, and then the last couple of slides, I'll probably just give you a heads up that when I send you a nice little email afterwards, what we did here in the next two slides is we really looked, especially me as a consultant, not a salesperson, I looked at all the challenges that most customers face in their world today. That's that left-hand column. And then there to the right, the Prospero solutions. So maybe I'll just bullet point just a couple of these, and I'll show you in depth in the application a little bit later here. The little top line is, hey, unfortunately, Microsoft really hasn't touched nor service packing those Microsoft stacks for the last 6 to 10 years. So Prospero has regular development, most of our features coming from our existing client base. I'll show you a nice little feedback area for those existing customers that you can share your viewpoints and what you'd like to see new in the product. Security basically stunk inside the manager reporter. You had only 4 rigid roles that you cannot change, but Prospero offers you unlimited security roles and groups based on what they can or cannot do. The fourth bullet point regarding the application, I made a little sentence earlier about, hey, you're having to do sort of double the work now, meaning reporting side, budgeting side, you're maybe having to maintain different systems, Excel files, reports, etc. But now Prospero does that all nicely within one tool to leverage. Item 5, line set maintenance. That's one of the most tedious things that I see most customers being very manual and error prone. That is an example like if I'm adding a new revenue expense to my general ledger, we have a great feature called summary accounts and expand, or some keywords I'll mention right now that I'll show you in just a little bit. Item 6, in Microsoft's ever so wisdom, not, when they went from FRX to Manager Reporter, they yanked away all the output options like printer, Excel, PDF, etc. We brought those back based on widely customer used and requested features. And then last little slide deck is graphing. There's basically no graphing ability in the Microsoft stack, but we've brought that into the tool to do some nice little graphical representation, even drill into graphs, and even create quote unquote like dashboards or KPI, key performance indicator types. Item 8 is one of my favorite features. I always love analyzing data instead of processing and doing journal entries. So there's going to be some great drill down to account and transaction level, including changing on the fly what we call the drill order. Like, do I want to drill first in the location, then secondly department, or vice versa, or even entity first or last? So we can easily do that without having to go to a second, third, or fourth report. Maybe the last little quick things, item number 10, statistics, that maybe just speaks of the very flexible and powerful data warehouse to include any GL and non-GL data, statistics, budgets, you name it, non-general ledger segments like employee or product salesperson from earlier. And how about last but not least, I'm always a penny pitcher in my own company household, but what we also see as differentiators of Prospero that stands us apart from the rest is the price point. We have such powerful, robust features and functionality, so we'll further share information on that, especially for new prospective customers. So thanks for that little overview, and I'm done with PowerPoint, so hopefully that wasn't too painful. And now I'm going to jump right into the application. And when I do so, I usually like to look at a couple different personas or people that you have in an organization. Maybe one of those two or three might be a CFO. And here's an example that my CFO, every day, they log into Prospero and they want to see a nice little report collection or dashboard of a couple of key reports and a couple of key graphs to analyze data. And I'm going to further interact with those, like drill down, export to Excel, add annotations or notes, just to name a few of the interacting bullet points I'm referring to. Or how about secondly, of a second persona, I'm going to log in as an end user. And maybe third, I'm going to talk about a power user, like most of you on this phone call that might be in the finance and accounting area in charge of maintaining and setting up the system. So let me actually log in as an end user. So when I train some end users, like my managers in the field, to consume reports or enter budget data, all I need is about 15 or 20 minutes of their time, like I'm about ready to role play now with you, of how an end user might view financial reports and maybe enter budget data. And whenever I log into Prospero, you have a nice little quick launch window that I might have a couple of favorites, because how about you're my boss in the accounting area? You provide me visibility to two reports every month. This top report might be a good old actual versus budget report. And how about this bottom report? A nice little rolling 12-month and this year, last year trend that I like to see. Or maybe a second shortcut and function. You might want me to do some budget input that I'll get to secondly. I'll start with the reporting side. Now, when I'm launching Prospero, you have nice options of how you want to install or deploy it. It could be on your servers and computer, or it might be a third party that a lot of people are moving toward to have that hosted their general ledger. Or third and finally, we have a lot of our customers that actually have us host the system. So you have flexibility in that regard, and you can easily change your mind as you might change your deployment methodology down the road. Regardless, it's going to have the same look and feel regarding what deployment or where it's installed, and it could be a client or even web-based access to easily disseminate that to your staff. Let me now role play. I'm logged in as an end user. I'm going to open up this report, and let me take a second to further acquaint you with our demonstration chart of account structure. We have location and department in our general ledger. And third, we have accounts like revenue expense. We don't see the latter, the account, because that's going to be the lines in my report for an income statement I'm going to pull up. Now, many of you, even some I know on the phone call that I've actually worked with, are maybe multi-company. And we are actually multi-company in this environment, but this end user, based on what we call their assignments, has access only to company one. But in reality, in our demonstration database, we have multiple company, which I'll show you when I log in as a power user later, but this person's limited. Similar story, looking at the location. For simplicity, this person only has access to our Denver location, even though we have about 15 or 20. And third and finally, for this Denver location, yes, this user has access to all the different departments. And I could probably rattle off, even in a short hour or less, about 20 new features that we've added inside Prospero. One of those is this tree called All. And this little bullet point, either I could see a list of my departments or a graphical representation of it. We are now only seeing one tree called All. Which one of those new features is this All tree is automatically created and automatically maintained. So as new accounts, location departments come in, that saves a lot of manual oversight and maintenance and error-prone nature that you're having to do in your world today. And I'm going to show you a second or third example of trees. Let's say on location. I might want to break it out geographically, like east and west, or maybe locations I also want to break down by functions, because we have some primary sales and service groups of locations that I'll segue to a little bit later. And maybe third and finally, trees are ever so powerful and flexible inside the tool. I'll also show you trees on the account segment. Like I might have a tree of total revenue at total expense, and then I might subgroup those a little bit further. And that's that's the expand and summary accounts that I'll bring up a little bit later. All right, so I'm basically now, as the manager, you've just published these reports out to me that you've done your month-end close. I'm now consuming them, all real-time, secure, electronic, that auditors love hearing, and IT, or maybe you, the accountant, as well. Now let me interact with the report, and let me paraphrase maybe about 4 bullet points I'm going to take you to. One would be drilling down to the account and transaction level, seeing vendor customer information. Secondly, like you see these little blue dots, perhaps I want to add some financial footnotes or annotations, maybe explaining my variances to actual budget. Maybe third, I want to graphically display that data to analyze it, maybe in a nice picture, 1,000 words type of reference. Or maybe fourth interaction is maybe I want to export this report to Excel, PDF, or a printer. Let me return back to those bullet points. Like sales, I'll just randomly pick on. Remember, when I come up here and change the report prompt, this user had access to only one company and only one location. I'm now analyzing the report of all departments. I'm going to drill in, but what I could do is I can come from the lowest level, meaning individual department, which I'm just going to choose randomly sales department, because maybe I want to turn my focus just to a single department. But instead, I like to usually look at my financial data from the high level and drill down. So when I analyze sales, for an example, when I drill in, I'm in the all department report. Here is now what I'll call Department A, sales, or here is now Department B, marketing. We call that sort of the account level, or in this case, the different departments that I'm looking at multiple. Now the next click is all the way down to the transaction level. This is transaction 1, 2, 3. I usually would see what vendor or customer that came from, but we've hidden that. And then all that's going to be at your manager's fingertips. They do not need to have access to the general ledger. They just need to be a user inside Prospero, because in our data warehouse, it will contain these balances and transactions, including any non-GL data you wish. I'm just going to close a tab as I was drilling in. Now let me take that same example, but this person only had one company, United States, and only one location of Denver that they had access to. But what I like to do is let me share with you this same report, but I'm now logged in as a power user. Now the power user has access to see and control what line or column are being used. I'll talk about that a little bit further later, but my emphasis is now I'm opening up the report for all companies in all locations. Now here's a second example of trees we saw earlier on the department. Well, the company or location, just like earlier, we have this tree called all, which is automatically created and maintained. But what I also did was I created my own tree, what I'm going to call tree number 2 by division, or here's tree number 3 by region. So when I describe something like south, east, and west, now here's an example of our Midwest in our chart of accounts are all those locations that begin with a 4, which is great news because if I added a new Midwest location, I do not have to update this tree. Otherwise, in your Microsoft stack, you definitely would have to. Now, your maybe departments can be in category order if it's not cleanly numbered, as I'm just expanding just to show you how you can have ranges, children, or individual amounts. Now, in Manager Porter, if you had 3 different trees, you would have to have 3 different reports. But here is where I easily, based on my security, always like to add of what I'm having access to or assigned. Maybe this one report I can slice and dice on any of my 3 trees without having to go to 3 different reports. All right, I'm just going to open this up at the all tree. That's our nice little trusty favorite. Now, one of my favorite features I'm segueing into is the great feature of where I can predefine my drill order and even change that order on the fly. Now, I'm in my CFO's shoes, or maybe use the controller. Now, when I analyze sales, when I drill in, my first level of hierarchy I normally like to analyze my entire organization by is by company. That's my first click. Here's company 1, United States, or company number 2, Europe. Or maybe my second click in hierarchy I like to analyze my data by is by the location, because the other user came in at this lower level, only at Denver, and only at the United States company that I'm currently now showing you just this one line. But then this user, yes, can go further down to the account and transaction level like we saw before. Now, as I close these different drill downs open, I even can show these side by side if I wanted to do some little cross-referencing of the data. But I'm just going to close some tabs out here. And when I mention I always like analyzing data, I do not have to go to a second, third, or fourth report, because Maybe I want to see who the problem child or areas are, or those people I need are praiseworthy. So instead of me hunting down maybe 50 different location department combinations, I can come up here and change the drill order. Well, here's my default. I usually predefine at the report level, like company first. Location was my second click when drilling in, or department third. But how about I'm going to drag department to the very top? Or this could be salesperson, it could be customer, you name it, based on your GL or non-GL segments. Now when I drill in, instead of company first, location second, department third, I'm immediately going to the department level. And I can quickly see maybe who the variances are. Maybe that's that department 400 research and development. And now, instead of me looking at all companies and all departments, I'm just going to come up here and reopen the report. And maybe I'm just going to look at just department 400 R&D. Maybe that's what I'm going to turn my attention to my analysis to. All right, once that renders, you can sort of see behind the scenes. I'm just going to take you to maybe one or two things report related that makes Prospero super easy and stands above the competition. Maybe three things I'm going to segue to. Then I'm going to get back to my end user to finish up some bullet points, but might be logically to share that right now. Well, this goes back to the earlier slide where I said, hey, we took the best things of Manager, Reporter, and Forecaster, which is our reusables, lines, columns, and under the home ribbon, this button called the catalog view. I can see all the different templates and reports inside the system, and I can see who last modified it, when, and when they were last published, like you see some columns to the right. I also can sort all these reports by the line set being used. So here, further emphasizing, yeah, there's one line set I'm sharing between all these reports versus most of our competition is Excel hell, we call it. All you would see in the competition that are Excel based, you would see all these different files out here, and you have no clue of who last edited it and when. You'd have no clue and no reusable nature of the line and column, because I'm guessing these three all shared the same line set. And if I had to change their structure, like maybe the PPE COVID loan, management wants me to add a couple of lines, I'd have to open up all these individual reports. But Prospero, that does not apply to. We're not an Excel add-in. We have these reusable lines, columns, etc. So for those new people on this phone call, I'll definitely have the people who are longtime users on this phone call share their love and stories with you, but there's at least my perspective of. A couple other quick things I want to share with you is I'm going to take one step back. When I talked about graphically displaying data, there is maybe my CFO, and that's actually a report collection. Maybe two reports here to the left, maybe two graphs here to the right. And I'm actually going to interact with the graphing here in just a second, but let me always be transparent and show you behind the scenes. Like for this one report using this income statement line set, my budget column, I'm going to go to the chart tab. You do not have to buy an extra module or license that most of our competition do. You do not have to be an Excel guru, which I'm not, even I'm very expert at Excel. I fumble on graphs. You do not, because here, if you want to display a graph, all you have to do on this tab is say, yes, I want to see a graph, and then choose from one of our many different graph types. That's all you have to do. And then how about I'm even going to go to my end user. Here's this button here, display as a chart, and maybe with the 9 or 10 different graph types, looks like maybe this is a pie graph, because maybe I want to look at the margin analysis, because here's maybe my cost at 86, here's my profitability at 13, here's the prior year, and even I can drill into this graph. Now what we're seeing here to the right in the legend was the same type of drill down, meaning here's the different sales departments, or it could be customers or products based on your segmentation that you've defined or we've linked to inside Prospero. Now graphs are very cool, but what I can also do is change from the graph using this icon back to the report view. Now here is basic, like the heading alludes to. This is when I drilled into my revenue. Here's maybe the different accounts and or departments based on my drill order and analysis, and maybe I want to export this to Excel. I'm just going to accept the default name and path, and I'm going to provide maybe 2 or 3 examples now. This first is one single report and one single sheet. Notice all the font formatting, shading, formulas contained. My second example of maybe 2 or 3 is maybe one report, however, broken down by different location and departments as I'm now toggling between the different sheets. Okay, one report, maybe different location and departments as an option that you have, but I'd say most people log into the secure viewer that I led in with. Secure, electronic, real-time, drill down to the transaction level, graphs, annotations that I haven't shown you that are not available in Excel, but at least you have an option to maybe share this with board members, bankers, etc. And speaking of board members, maybe a last example inside of Excel is that same report collection word you heard me quote a couple of times, meaning multiple reports. Like, how about my board or banker? Every single month, I run all 3 reports, sending it to one Excel file. Like, here is income statement, or here's report number 2, balance sheet, or report number 3, cash flow. Easy report collection. I just send to maybe one Excel file, or it could be multiple different ones, just like I could have a PDF, or shall I say a report book. Because in my report book, here might be page 1, income statement, or here might be that same report collection, report 2 being the balance sheet or cash flow, but this is actually one report and income statement, just different companies and departments, but there's a PDF output. And then maybe a keyword that I'll again show you is what we call report collections. So here is high level overview. Here is what I'll call report 1, 2, 3, 4. And on the output tab, I could send it out to Excel, our publish report area, PDF, etc. And that's all you have to do. Awesome, we love it. Bring the easy button to the budgeting reporting. Maybe the final bullet point for the reporting side, then I'll transition to budgeting, which I spend half my life getting out of Excel hell with customers on, is I want to add some annotations behind this financial report. Now, here is a little bullet point. I'm hovering on top of it. That's the note for this account, but how about I'm going to do one from scratch? That is, anywhere on this line, I'm going to right click for annotate, which also is a icon in the toolbar. Usually I'm not too elaborate on my little note for demonstration purposes, but there's the note I just added. And what the system does here to the right that I've hidden, but maybe I'm not. So I'm going to thumbtack to not auto hide. I'm logged in as a generic manager 1, but here is Bob Smith or Sally Jones on this date and time, added the note. And then maybe you might be my boss saying, yep, Derek and I spoke, and this is our course of action. Then anybody else reviewing this financial report could then see easily that dialogue. They do not have to go to a separate email, Word document, or a separate attachment. That's all going to be nice at their fingertips, these financial footnotes to collaborate. All right, so there is on the reporting side, as I just recap, drilling down to the account and transaction level, drilling down, even changing the drill order, exporting it to Excel, PDF, etc., graphing, and annotating. Let me now change my attention to the budgeting side. And maybe one other thing on the reporting side just came to mind that I want to maybe be sure to emphasize is the summary accounts and the expansion. So what I'm going to do is I'm logged now back as my power user. And looking at this report, we have a couple other new features here where I can show hidden columns. Maybe 2 common examples. One might be, yes, sometimes the account number a user might want to see, other times not. Second example, this actual, how about it's quarterly or year-to-date figures, and maybe I want to show the hidden months of the quarter of the year to have both maybe a summarized and a detailed report without having to go to a second, third, or fourth report. But really my emphasis here is above this total expenses, I'm expanding and showing all the individual expense accounts. This summary account for total expenses, I can name anything I want, like I called it net income here. I called it gross profit using some alphabetic names, but you can call it anything you wish. And then since I'm a power user in the accounting area, I have access to review the line and column or the original report definition, like I was showing you the graph where I turned on or off. Let's go briefly to the line set. Well, I could do things the old-fashioned way, meaning individual accounts and ranges, but the new better way, because I'm really just zooming into my natural account here, We saw this before when I looked at departments. That is, I can see all my accounts numerically through a list, or I can also see the accounts graphically through a tree. And now let me turn my attention to expenses. In the report, which I'm sure you haven't forgot about, but in a report, above this row, I'm showing all the individual accounts, but really in reality, in my line set, it's one line that I never have to touch and maintain, usually. Because what I'm using is a summary account, and here's maybe a third example of tree on our account segment. Usually most customers only have one tree, but our demonstration has a couple different trees, like some of our cash flow and budget, balance sheet budgeting. Maybe I'm rolling up some non-cash accounts like depreciation separately. But let's focus on this one net income tree for my illustration. Maybe I have different levels like gross profit, revenues, cost of goods sold. But let me just focus on the expense node. I could maybe subgroup expenses like key subgroups like wages, utilities, travel. But for this example, I just have one wild-carded range. Or another way to phrase that is if I add any new general ledger accounts that fall within this range, I do not have to update my tree. I do not have to update my account tree, nor I do not have to update this line set, which a lot of times this line set or row definition is used both for the report and also my budget screens, which I'm going to get to next. And another thing I like to share with you that most products do not have this features and ease of use is I like to show you behind the scenes of this tree. So under trees, we saw briefly our department like all tree, or the location we saw it by division and region like the east and west, etc. But let me show you the tree on our natural account. I'm just going to expand all the levels of the tree. Here's that expenses node. Now I can also I can come from the reverse direction, meaning this one master tree. You can have more than one tree, but usually just have one master one. I want to right click, where am I referencing this summary account for total expenses? Now, great. No other product that I know of, I work with about 5 or 6 competing products, no other product gives me the visibility I see here. Right, great. I can see these are all using these different line definitions used for budgets or reports. Or similar story here. Hey, where's gross profit used? Same story. Right click, where's it used? That way, if I change my mind, maybe regroup some accounts, which I'm just going to play around with. I'm going to move these accounts from one bucket to another, or these could be locations or regions I'm doing on a different segment. Yes, I could easily drag and drop, move those around. But I'm not going to save that here. All right, great. There's the account tree, what we call summary accounts and expanding. Over here to the right, expand above. And what 0 levels means is it says, show me every individual account. Or a second example might be on cost of goods sold. If I typed in the number 1 here, it might show me one level down, which might be my labors, material, and overhead, which is one level beneath cost of goods sold if I reference that summary account. All right, so huge win for new feature functionality and easy use. Now this budget data, it is real time, have just entered, let's say the 20 people on today's phone call. How about all of you have entered your budget as of this morning? I do not have to import exports or manually collect and regurgitate that data. Excel hell, we are not. So this is all self-contained within the database. So I'm going to actually return to my end user. Here's the report. I was looking at maybe last month's data, but let me go back one step to my original quick launch. Like here's the 2 favorite reports where I've shown you actual budget rolling 12 month. But how about this time of year where you want me to do some budget data entry? And then I'm just simply opening this budget up for my US and only Denver location. That's again what we call security assignments. I'll probably segue to that in just a second toward the tail end of today's call. But let me share with you another viewpoint of the awesome rows, columns, and trees, because I'm going to open up 3 departments. First of all, my administration department, which is expenses only, not revenue. I'm then going to open up a second department, which is also expenses only, and I could maybe open up 50 of these departments. They all share the same line set. They're all automatically rolled up within the all tree, so I don't have to do ugly Excel hell consolidations. This button here called reopen the input. I'm now just going to go to department B. or Department 300 is another expense department. And third and finally, yeah, these two share the same line set. It could be 50, 100 of my departments or locations that do so. But let me share with you a third and final example of one of my sales and cost of goods sold departments. Now, an earlier phrase I led in with in the phone call was awesome. Prospero has its own data warehouse, GL and non-GL data. And let me requote those maybe same three examples from earlier. One is products like 10 motors or product 20 compressors. These are not in my general ledger as segments or dimensions, but I can definitely account for those, both actual and budget inside the system. Second example of three of non-general ledger data is statistics like units sold, the sales price per unit or cost of goods sold price, which I want my users to enter, and then we calculate the revenue or expense off of. These statistics are not my general ledger. That's okay. It's better they not, because it's easier to maintain and control that in this warehouse instead of all the rigmarole in their general ledger. Third and final example is the largest cost of most organizations is staffing and salary. Now, these gray lines, these are my preference of any color you wish, of lines you do not directly enter into versus rows and white yes. And the third and final example is I'm looking at this one department, and here's the employee detail. And then as I reflect on 25 years and probably 1,000 customers I've worked with on their budgeting reporting, I usually see three common ways people might want to model or budget their staffing. One is by their name, like Bob, Sally, Jane. Secondly, by their position, like, hey, I need this many manufacturing people. I need this many clerks. I need this many registered nurses, whatever for your industry. Or third and finally, it might be statistically based. Like, how about based on sales or projection levels? I need this many man or woman hours or this margin, which I call that statistically based, which I might use some of these figures here, do it more on a dollar, not person or position based. And even I could do a hybrid model, meaning some of my admin departments may want to do by name and position, but some of my variable revenue and overhead or COGS, cost of goods sold, maybe want to do it statistically based, like some of these examples were. So possibilities are endless of how you might want to model or capture that. That'll be for a different story or day that we can maybe have these talks one-on-one for those newer prospective people, or maybe your phase 2 or 3 of your deployment for existing customers. All right, now let me take this one budget screen and let me bullet point maybe about 3 or 4 things of great bells and whistles. One was the HR, which I'll take you to a couple other fields further within that. Secondly, capital, because here might be some new capital acquisitions, like for computers, equipment I want to budget for, including the related depreciation. And this could flow through a balance sheet screen, which I could show you later if time permits. Followed by, here is line item detail, which I'm going to expand or collapse to show maybe detail behind an account, or audit trail history, or annotations. Let me actually start with the latter, what we call annotations. Earlier I shared with you an example when I was looking at last historical data of my actual budget. I was explaining to my bosses why I was over under budget, but now this is my budget looking forward, maybe where I'm explaining my budget rationale. Here's a button on the toolbar. I'm going to show the annotations column. Even to the left, I'm going to maybe minimize and maximize what we call the navigation pane. But over here to the right, me or anybody else reviewing the budget, you can see who, like Bob or Sally, when, a little time date stamp, and here's all the little notes from my budget. I can easily see why they're budgeting these amounts. Secondly, line item detail, like here in green, I'm going to collapse and expand these. Now these are great on the fly because maybe I'm in marketing department. We have general ledger account 7350 for advertising. Derek budgeted 200,000. What the heck is Derek doing? Why is he budgeting that? Well, I can see why and when, and I can come up here and insert another line item on the fly. This is great, and maybe to save time I won't, but I could then type in some extra descriptions and break it down. Maybe professional services. Here's my legal team. Here's my consulting team. I want to break down professional services further, maybe a second example. Now, a lot of times, I also might have some fixed structure. So in this little screen here, yep, maybe I want my users to enter the number of units sold they're projecting, their sales price and cost of goods sold, or maybe I control as the administrator this margin or cost, but you again determine which I's are editable or looked up, like some assumption screen that some of these values are driven from, or that are formula driven, like sales is just a formula off of units times price. You control the look and feel of this screen, which is almost infinite in its possibilities. Next bullet point is audit trail history. Here's $6,000. I'm just going to change it to $700. I'm even going to copy that to the right, that $700 value, and I just saved. I just did a keyboard shortcut. This has a very familiar Office like Microsoft look and feel. So as I roll this out to power users and end users, they're very comfortable, but it has all the steroid use of trees, reusable line columns, etc. And let me now click on this button. I'll show you two examples of maybe three of history. One is more granular, like this account 6260 for disability insurance. I want to see the history behind that. So here is Derek logged in as manager 1, or you'll see Bob or Sally here. Change it from $6,000 today to $700. And that's again just this one account for disability. I knew what I was looking for. I knew disability changed, and my cursor was anywhere on that line, and I clicked on the history button. Second example is I'm going to click on, at the very top, not a specific account. Same button, history, but this time we're seeing history across multiple accounts. So here's all the different accounts. Maybe I'll expand disability like we saw before. And then even I can do easy searches like, hey, I want to see Bob versus me or Sally, or maybe dates. I can do some filter maybe to narrow down, right? It was yesterday $1 million, now it's $2 million. Who changed it and when? So across multiple accounts, but still only for one location and department. And that's really the final thing. I could also look at all trail history across multiple location departments, which I'll save for a different day, but easily just to filter and do that. All right, great. There is some of our bells and whistles. Let me circle back to a couple of our detail tabs. One is, here's what I sort of call my revenue cost detail model. Or second example, let's go back to our salaries and wages. These lines are grayed, meaning that's my preferred color to tell you to stay away from, versus white you enter and edit. So here is salaries, including bonuses, overtime, commissions, statistics for headcount, FTE, and hours, both budget and also actual that I can record these by. And then here is some related benefits, like here's my life insurance, payroll tax. Now notice payroll tax, it starts high and tapers down. In the system, there's no formulas at all. But I work with about 4 or 5 other tools that this line alone for income tax and some competing products is ungodly. That would take me hours upon hours, and I go back to Excel hell. So if you do compare other products, make sure they share you behind the scenes. They're afraid to, because I know it's involved. It's me as a veteran consultant, it's painful. But in Prospero, let me show you the easy button and method for that. Now, I'm just going to go briefly from the left to the right. We can have different pay grades, but that really tells us in different expense accounts, which I'm going to show you on a secondary screen. I could either have just one column that says what month they start, like period 1, or period 12 that they end, but I even can break this out by month on what we call seasonality. We're seeing a combination of both hourly and salary people, like you see the varying dollars here, and also we're seeing hourly and salary differences here, what we call mixed. But I want to show everybody hourly based, or I want to show everybody full-time equivalency based, as these now figures are adjusting accordingly. But maybe I'm going to go back to mixed just to again show you the capability that based on how simple or granular you need to take your HR modeling, we have a lot of features and functionalities to handle those needs. Now, continue to the right, some other needs that we've addressed and met over the years are, let's look at here, this person starts making $25,000. I'm giving a 3% raise, or excuse me, 10% raise in period 3. I also can do bonuses by $1%. If the bonus period is left blank, it's going to accrue it for all the months they work. Or I can say, nope, this person is going to get the bonus paid in period 1 or 6, so either simplified, accruing it each month, or very granular, specific periods. And then over here to the right, some other fields might be overtime, items, commissions, yay or nay. You don't have to use these. And there's little fields here, like overtime. If I don't need it or want it, I just turn those off. Or if I do need to use it and see it, I'm just turning these on and off here. Now, as I further go to the right, let's now, some other painful things to be accurate in Excel, Hell, or competing products is benefits. I'm going to maybe show you 2 or 3 examples. Like I'll use our MSX group as an example. We have employees in about 15 different states. I live in California. We have some Colorado people. We have some Florida, New Jersey. I can rattle off more. But whenever Derek gets loaded and imported as a start to my budget, it does not matter what payroll system you're using. You just need a simple export file that has columns like their name, like Bob or Sally, how much they make and what department, and I simply import that in. And I might also have a column for their state, like Derek might have a California next to his name, along with Derek might have a family or single. Now you define what these column names and choices are, because some other benefits might be 401k, cell phone, yes or no, etc. Now here's a time where I like to transition to show you behind the scenes that our competition are afraid to, is I'm now long as the administrator, and I want to show you now the structure of this budget. Well, simply I'm going to go from the tabs from the left to the right, because when I opened up 3 departments, majority of my departments were expenses only. That's what we call this main or master line set. But looking at the override tab, whenever I pulled up our sales department 200, we used a different line set called sales. So if you laid out all your location departments on the table, you might have a couple of different piles or line sets that might have different accounts, statistics, or formulas. But here's where you easily maintain control that. It could be an individual department or location, like this is an individual location, but could it be a group of locations through our little trees? Because maybe for the region, how about for the division, I want maybe my sales division use a sales line set, or maybe my service division of my organization use a service line set when they do budgeting. There's again another example of the powerful trees to define some logic in the system. Security access, what template or line set's being used, and I'll show you security in just a second. And let me now segue to HR. I'll be a little abbreviated here because we have what are called pay grades. And my simple interpretation of that is this is really just the expense account that you're going to hit when you budget to them. We have really 2 general ledger accounts in our demonstration database for salaries based on what position you are. And then really we just get a little bit granular saying, yep, you have options for hourly or salary. Here's maybe some default pay rates, but you can definitely load it, enter it, or edit it by the individual. I always like to add that they can be further defined. Here's bonuses, yay or nay. Here's default amounts that, again, yes, can be defined, imported, or entered or edited at the individual level, including revenue and commission account. It's based off of overtime eligibility, yay or nay. And last but not least, here is our benefits and taxes. And I'm actually going to add another one here because we have employees also in New Jersey. So let's say the expense account is account 6300 for taxes, like you see the lines above. Now in summary, benefits could either be a percent of salary, like I'll show you this FICA, maybe with a limit, or the next line down, Medicare without a limit. And that was percent of salary. Or secondly, benefits could either be a fixed dollar. And even life insurance, maybe this is a $25 fee per $1,000 of salary if I populated this increment field. And then how about in this New Jersey I'll continue with? How about New Jersey has a 5% and a $5,000 limit? Then here the state field, maybe we just expanded operations. So I'm just going to add a new New Jersey line to this grid. And then immediately, I do not have to do any other formulas. Any New Jersey person that I tag with this California or New Jersey tag, the system knows to do this rate limit. There's no formulas behind the scenes. It's one simple table you maintain. Like here to the right, let me actually add a new one here called cell phone. And maybe I'm just going to add a choice of yes or no, or it could be 401k, like 1% contributor, 2%, 3%. So you can add more fields here to the right, like this little up arrow. We're currently showing you 5 fields, and I'll just show you maybe a 6th one, 7th one, etc. I just added some additional fields based on maybe some other benefit groups that you might need, like these 4 or 5 I shared. Awesome. In just a couple minutes, I'm done. Otherwise, I usually have to spend about a whole day or two on other products doing what in Prospero just takes me about an hour to do. All right, so HR, let me now conclude in the last few minutes with a few little miscellaneous items. One would be, and these again are miscellaneous, security. Another would be awesome way to get in touch with our product or development team. And let me share that last one. Almost all of our product features come from our customer feedback. So I see a large majority of the people attending today are existing customers. So under the home ribbon, we have this Prospero help. And I'm actually going to show you a couple things because earlier I opened up a line set randomly and I was showing you a couple of fields here. But if you wanted to see further information, I just hit the F1 button on the keyboard and it knew immediately I was in the line set, and maybe it takes me to the different fields. And we were looking at the segment description area here. I could do ranges, wildcards, etc. But I know this is just a little one-off, but a lot of times we get myself in the consulting area or support team gets a lot. I've asked, like, how do I do this? So the F1 button at your fingertips will automatically pull up great online help. We also have a veteran staff that's been around 15, 20 years like I to help you along the way. Next item here under home ribbon, I was just showing you the help here, which is the F1 button shortcut. But here is our message board, which if you have any questions that you want to share with existing customer base or our consulting staff that maintains that, you can easily do so. And lastly, here's the feedback and support. And I call this a nice little red hot like Batman. I might have a product suggestion of maybe a new feature I want seen, or here it might be a little support issue or error that I'm getting. And if I come up here, and this is Derek's demo, I just put a description here of what my issue is. And once I click submit, I chuckle here because they're like, oh, Derek's demoing again feedback. But immediately we're going to have probably an entire team of support people saying, hey, I'm jumping on this one. And they're going to respond. Usually we say in 4 hours max, but literally it's in minutes. We're already tackling that. So I always like to applaud our great and experienced support and development teams on that. And there's my little way to how existing customers can give us feedback of new features or support line in case any of us like consultants might be tied up like in this illustration. How about the next miscellaneous item? When I logged in as an end user who had only access to Denver and Company 1, here is my users. Normally, we would log in with what we call Windows authentication. I'm actually taking one step back just to show you whenever I log in, IT loves hearing this. So here we can log in with your Windows or network credentials, which IT, again, loves hearing. Secure. That way you do not have to maintain separate user IDs and passwords. But for our demonstration database, we have fictitious users like Manager 1 or Manager 2, which now let me segue to show you that, because here is my Manager 1 user. And two things I'm going to summarize in security, and that's really all it is. We always call these products by accountants for accountants. So here's their assignments. I could add additional lines, but this user had access to only Company 1. But if I had access to all companies, I could either use all, or I could use the little asterisk right beneath. Both accomplish the same. Or how about location? Second example, similar story. Instead of one location 4100, how about Derek or this Manager 1 in my regional tree is in charge of the Midwest? And the same phrase from earlier, if I add a new Midwest location, we'll call it 411, 4102, I do not have to update my tree, nor I do not have to update my security. And I also might have a budget template line set that says use for the Midwest or service area. I do not have to update those definitions. And finally, security related, that's what we call assignments. Now, when I logged in as my end user, I only gave them access to 2 reports, but in reality, you have about 30 or 40 demonstration reports that you also can maybe leverage in your deployment. Here is what I'll call report number 1. I have visibility as an end user to, or report number 2, and maybe me logging in as the end user again. We just have one little button. I'm going to compare this income statement I'm about ready to open up to a balance sheet. This income statement that I'm on, this button called visibility, yeah, maybe I want my users to see that. Or maybe it's a balance sheet, maybe not. Or if it is the balance sheet, instead of all my users seeing the balance sheet, maybe I turn it off and I can get more granular. I can get more granular at the roller group level, or I even can get as granular down to the individual user, because maybe my sales manager is the only person that gets to see this sales detail report. So that again is the only other little tidbit on security. Super easy. We had assignments like company or department ABC or report visibility. And we also have that in the budget side, because maybe I have a budget version 1, 2, 3, which might be best case, worst case, or middle level scenario. Same thing for visibility of which budget versions your user can see or edit. That would be the only other remark I'll add on visibility. All right, so let me conclude sort of like I began in with my contact information. So again, my name's Derek.Krebs, in case anybody joined a little bit later in this recording. We will be sharing those people live. I see about 20 or 30 people, so thank you very much. Let me actually look at the question area, but since we have such wide and varying questions, usually what we like to do is follow up with you individually on those, and that would be an extended invite offer, live or through recording. If you'd like to discuss this individually, even you might be a current customer that you want to talk about, maybe how you want to deploy phase 2 or 3 of your application, I or the rest of the team in the consulting can help you on that regard. So thanks one and all for attending. I'm actually going to look at the question area. I actually fielded about 3 or 4 questions. I had another monitor that I was chiming in, so thanks for those. I see maybe 4 questions that I did address through my presentation today, and I'm looking through the other log here. I think I see 1 repeat question. But if I missed anything, please reach out at any time. So again, this is Derek. Thanks for attending today, and look for a follow-up email or thank you. Otherwise, have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.